Liz, and Andy pitched their tents in the dense forest. It was a remote part of the wilderness, a place where cell signals died. And the only company was the rustling trees and the distant call of wild animals. They were miles from the nearest town, deep in the heart of the forest, surrounded by towering pines and a carpet of moss so thick it muffled their footsteps. And quote, "We'll make a fire," and quote, Tom said, gathering dry sticks and logs while Rachel unrolled her sleeping bag inside her tent. Liz and Andy were chatting nearby, the flicker of their laughter the only sound that broke the heavy silence of the woods. As the fire crackled to life, they settled around it, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. The forest grew darker, swallowing up the world beyond the small circle of light they had created. And quote, "Have you heard the local legend?" And quote, Andy asked suddenly, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Rachel rolled her eyes. And quote, "Here we go." And quote, "No, seriously," and quote, he insisted. And quote, "There's an old tale about this forest. They say it's haunted by the Whisperer," and quote, "The Whisperer," and quote, Liz raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. And quote, "Yeah, a spirit, or maybe something worse, that lures people deeper into the woods. With voices they recognize. People who've gone missing here. They were following the sound of someone they trusted." And quote, Rachel snorted. And quote, "Nice try, Andy. That's just a campfire ghost story." And quote, but Andy shook his head. And quote, "I'm not kidding. I read about it online. They say, once you hear the Whisperer, it doesn't stop. It calls out to you, using the voice of someone you know, someone you'd follow." And quote, a sudden gust of wind cut through the camp, causing the flames to flicker and casting eerie shadows on the trees. Tom chuckled nervously, breaking the tension. And quote, "Well, if I hear any voices tonight, I'm staying put. No wandering off into the woods for me." And quote, the conversation shifted back to lighter topics, but Rachel couldn't shake a growing unease. Something about the stillness of the forest seemed off. The trees, tall and ancient, loomed like silent sentinels. The darkness between them felt too deep, as though it was watching, waiting. Around midnight, the fire was dying down, and the group decided to call it a night. They crawled into their tents, their laughter fading as the forest reclaimed its silence. Rachel lay awake, her eyes heavy, but sleep wouldn't come. There was something unsettling about the quiet. Then, she heard it, soft at first, but unmistakable. Her mother's voice. And quote, "Rachel," and quote. She froze. Her mother was miles away, safe at home. It was impossible. And quote, "Rachel," and quote. The voice called again, a gentle whisper, coaxing, pleading. And quote, "Come here. I need you." And quote. Her heart raced. It sounded so real. She unzipped her tent, stepping into the cold night air. The forest was pitch black, save for the faint embers of the fire. She stood still, listening. And quote, "Rachel, please." And quote. It was coming from deeper in the woods. A knot formed in her stomach. She knew she shouldn't follow it. Andy's story echoed in her mind, but her mother's voice, so familiar, so comforting, compelled her to move. She took a step, then another, leaving the campsite behind. The trees seemed to close in around her as she walked further into the darkness. The voice grew fainter, but she could still hear it, guiding her deeper into the forest. Her pulse quickened with every step. Suddenly, the voice stopped. Rachel stood alone in the clearing, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. The silence pressed in from all sides. She turned to go back, but the path was gone. The forest looked unfamiliar, twisted, as if the trees had shifted to block her way. Panic surged in her chest. She started walking in the direction she thought was right, but the more she moved, the more lost she felt. The forest was a labyrinth, and she was its prey. Then she heard it again. This time, it was Tom's voice. And quote, "Rachel, over here," and quote. She whipped around, relief washing over her. And quote, "Tom," and quote. And quote, "Rachel, hurry," and quote. The voice came from deeper into the forest, but something was wrong. It didn't sound quite like Tom anymore. It was his voice, but distorted, as if it were being spoken through clenched teeth. And quote, "Rachel, come on," and quote. Her skin crawled. She took a step back, her instincts screaming at her to run, but her legs felt heavy, rooted to the ground. The voice was closer now, almost behind her. Suddenly, there was a rustling in the bushes, and Rachel turned to see a figure stepping out from the trees. It was Tom, or at least, it looked like him. But his eyes were wrong, black and gleaming like polished stones, and his mouth was twisted into a too wide smile. And quote, "Rachel," and quote. He whispered, though his lips didn't move. She backed away, terror clutching at her throat. The figure took another step toward her. Its movements jerky, unnatural. In a blind panic, Rachel turned and ran. Branches whipped at her face, the cold air stung her lungs, but she didn't stop. Behind her, she could hear the sound of footsteps, heavy, uneven, but relentless. She burst through the trees, stumbling back into the campsite. The fire had gone out, and the others were nowhere to be seen. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she looked around, desperate for some sign of life. And then she heard it again, a soft, familiar whisper, this time in Liz's voice. And quote, "Rachel, help me," and quote. The forest was alive, with whispers now, calling her name, pulling her deeper into its grasp. She dropped to her knees, her mind racing, knowing there was no escape. The whisperer had found her.